I've always had this highlight above the top, which is that it's almost always more fun to be nearly eaten than it is to be actually eaten. The game really tries to make sure that the players have thrilling escapes from the Sandworm. They will die, but perhaps not as often as they think. Dune Awakening takes place in an alternate timeline. An event occurred sometime before the start of the first book that caused a divergence to what we see in the book, and the game itself takes place about 8 years after the end of the first book in the timeline, in terms of our alt timeline. It was something that I agonized over in the beginning. We spent a lot of time thinking about where it could be. Could it be later, so that the world was kind of greener, and spoilers for anyone who hasn't read the later books, but the world is greener and has the Tanzaruf Desert. Should it be earlier? But eventually we sort of landed on, well, people want to see this iconic, characters and these moments that they've seen in the films and these locations, and the Fremen should kind of be analogous to how they are in the film. So we kind of thought that doing an alt timeline would avoid sort of the complications of, like, we're not stepping on the law, and the movies are their thing and the books are their thing, and then we're doing our version. And we figured that people, hopefully when we actually reveal how the alt timeline came to be, people will be like, okay, that's smart, and it follows a key moment from the books. I love all the Dune, Jodorowsky, and the Lynchian, and the Villeneuve stuff. They're all kind of different takes on the universe. And the good thing about making a game is you can kind of incorporate little pieces of each, right? So that was a lot of fun. Like I can't talk too much about it because I don't want to reveal too much, but spice, when you have enough spice in your bloodstream, game gets kind of interesting, right? So I think this stuff is kind of cool, and so we had a lot of fun playing around with that. Like it feels grounded. I actually think that's one of the things that I think is really interesting in the stories as well. Like it's very grounded. At the same time, it's kind of about tripping out on this substance, and everybody in the universe is getting addicted to it, right? I think that's really cool, and I think we play with that in the game in a very playful way as well. We made a game with a company called Petroglyph, called Conan Unconquered, and it was a Conan kind of RTS strategy game, right? And Petroglyph is basically made up of the guys who used to work on the Dune 2 original RTS game, right? It's all the old veterans from Westwood, and so they told us, hey, there's this new Dune movie probably going to be made, and they helped us to get contact with Legendary, and then we reached out and asked, hey, maybe we can make a game.
Were there any, not difficulties, but any sort of teething problems in kind of explaining some things that you might need to do because you're a video game to Legendary and the Herbert estate, who might not be as
sure
first?
Yeah, I think I for example, I think that like vehicles on the sand is kind of a hard. They don't really want that, right? But we do agree that vehicles can move on sand, and one vehicle could move on sand. What I'm kind of what I'm sort of like interested to see is when they see a video on YouTube of 400 people moving out at the same time, and sandworms are coming, right? Because there'll be more people making it across the sand than you'd expect, right? Because the sandworm can't eat everyone at the same time. So I think like video games, just by the nature of this possibility space, that kind of players will find ways to mess with the systems and the AI and stuff. So I think those concepts are just harder for them to grasp at the end of the day, because unless they've been working in this space, they don't really know. So it's like you can set a hard rule in a book that you can follow absolutely as an author, or in a film, but I think it's much harder in a player-driven space.
As a developer, how do you feel when you see someone do something that you guys maybe didn't plan for or even think you could do?
It depends on whether it impacts other players' experience. That, to me, is like the golden rule there. So if it impacts other players' experience in a massively negative way, it's never a good thing, and it makes me feel like we messed up and we should fix it. If it doesn't impact players' experience in a negative way and enhances a player's experience because they found a way to do something cool, I mean, all for it, right? Like that's where it's fun. That's the sandbox part of things.
And on Sandworms, you guys made it very clear you can't beat them. Was there ever a question of being able to beat them for you guys, or was that a very sort of strict edict from day one? Yeah,
no. I mean, Sandworms were never planned to be like it's not a boss fight, right? Sandworms are a actual force of nature in the game. Their attention mechanic. We always kind of make the joke that it's like every time you walk on the sand, the Jaws music should start. Right, that's kind of the point, like dun dun, and that's how we want players to feel. Like every time they're doing something, that's kind of the dynamic of the game, right? It's like spice blows happen out here. We got to pull you out here, and it's like I don't want to go swim in the shark-infested waters, but the game's kind of telling me I have to in order to get this thing. So it's always been very clear that you couldn't fight them. You can just distract them. I mean, it is a balance, right? It's something that happens during beta as well that we optimize for. We listen to what players are saying, but in general, I think there's a way to make things feel like they're dangerous and harsh without making them, punish the player, right? So I think that like allowing players first of all to upgrade themselves out of some of the harder situations, like water, of course, in the beginning is very difficult, but once you get a still suit and you can start drinking from your own suit as you're playing the game, and your water starts to optimize, and you only according to Herbert, you only lose a thimbleful of water a day if you're wearing a still suit, which makes it makes water almost negligible in a sense. It's only then you need it for other types of crafting and stuff, then you need to care about it. But so there are those ways, allowing people to upgrade out of it, allowing people to like mitigate some of these things as they progress in the game. On the other side of it, I also think there's something about the penalty for dying, which really matters, right? So in our game, as long as you have water, you can self-revive. So if you fall, if you get taken down in battle, you can crawl behind, like it's like a down but not out system, like in Gears of War, so you can crawl behind a wall and get yourself back up. Or if you're playing with friends, they can get you up, right? Like, so there's kind of these mechanics we've designed to kind of make it so that playing with friends and being together in the world, and also kind of you don't feel that punished when you die, right? And then it also depends on what you lose. Like if you die and you have to respawn at your base, what do you actually lose? And we're quite light on some of those penalties. We're not a full PvP loot game in that sense. We don't want players preying on each other in the same way. And I guess the last point is just that it's really about like creating a thing that feels like it's dangerous all the time, but doesn't actually, really. I mean, you want the tension to be there, but not the pain, in a way. So Frank's kind of texts are the ones that take place around the time of our timeline, right? So it's very tied to his stuff. But when we go outside, like I say, the games kind of expand on, that not everything that's happening in the books happen. The games have a little more. So then we look at Brian, because he's our next source for this, right? So we kind of, what does this look like? Does Brian have anything like this? We need to do this in the game. Does Brian have anything like this? And sometimes we find stuff, sometimes we don't. So we do use it as a secondary source, but I think because of where our time frame is, we focus primarily on, I would say, the first 3 books, the Frank's 3 books. So they're our main sort of reference, and then everything is a step beyond that. So, but I will say that there are events and characters from Brian's books that will show up in our game. You don't always know as a game developer, right? You align around a bunch of features that you think are going to work, and then you get players into your game, and it turns out they like this a lot more than they like this thing that you invested time in. And then you kind of decide to lean more into the things that players are doing, the activities that they're doing, the things that they like to do. So I feel like I've worked on, now this is like probably the 4th MMO that I've actually made. So I've worked on these games for a long time, and I feel like they're a completely different beast once they launch, and you kind of have to be prepared for that. So I think it'll be fine. We'll continue to work. We're already kind of doing it in the beta. I think if you think about Conan Exiles, we launched it in early access, and then we had a long period of early access, and then we launched the game. And during that period of early access, it really shaped a lot of what we had. With Dune, I don't think we're going to go early access. We're going to launch directly. But you can say that our beta period for us is similar in the sense that this is a period where we get a lot of players in, we get a lot of feedback, and we update and change our systems based on what they're saying.
Arrakis is a test. Few survive it. But the humans that do